Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to completely change the way you look at history today. Usually when we think of history, we picture memorizing this long, dusty list of dates, names, and places. But what if I told you that the map itself, the geography, is actually the ultimate why behind almost every single major historical event? Seriously, geography isn't just a static map of the where, it's the active driving force behind the why. It is literally the stage that sets the scene for everything that follows.
But before we start looking at maps, I want us to ground our mindset with a really beautiful perspective. Psalm 16:6 says, "The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance." Now, in history, geography dictated exactly where people settled, where they fought, traded, and built communities. But looking at it from a biblical perspective, places and our inheritance carry some incredibly deep meaning. Land and location aren't just dirt and water, right? They are gifts. And those gifts require our gratitude, our wisdom, and a whole lot of responsibility. We have to really value the places God provides and think about how the choices we make in those places affect everyone around us. Keep that in the back of your mind as we travel back in time today.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our quick roadmap for today. First, maps tell the story. 2. Jamestown, Rivers and Survival. 3. Saratoga, the Strategic Hudson. 4. The Alamo, Crucial Crossroads. And finally, 5. Education with Biblical Morality.
All right, Section 1. Maps tell the story. Think about it. If we only memorize names and dates, we are completely missing out on why these massive, world-changing events unfolded the way they did. You kind of have to think of geography as this invisible hand shaping human destiny. It's way more than just lines drawn on a piece of paper. It's the vital story of where history actually happened and how those specific locations forced leaders to make huge decisions. Let's look at cause and effect geographically for a second. Why did some early settlements blow up into massive wealthy cities, while others just disappeared completely? Well, the ones that survived were usually built right near natural trade routes or deep water ports. Or why did armies build forts exactly where they did? Because high ground provides a natural defense against enemies. When you connect the where to the what, you finally get the full, vibrant story of history.
So, let's build a quick mental timeline for our journey today. We're going to hit 3 specific historical anchor points between the 17th and 19th centuries. We'll start in the year 1607 with the Jamestown settlement. Then, we jump forward a bit to 1777 for the Battle of Saratoga during the American Revolution. And finally, we'll push into the 19th century, to the year 1836, right into the heart of the fight for Texan independence at the Alamo.
Moving right along, Section 2, Jamestown, Rivers and Survival.
Picture this. 1607, a group of English colonists just arrived in the New World, and they decide to set up camp right on the banks of the James River in Virginia. Now, what's really interesting about this is how geography acts as a total double-edged sword here. Why this exact spot? Well, the major advantage was the James River itself. It offered easy, deep-water ship access. That meant large vessels could sail right up to the settlement and drop off crucial supplies and new settlers directly from England. It was a literal lifeline. But that exact same location almost wiped them entirely off the map. The land was incredibly swampy. It was basically a breeding ground for mosquitoes, which led to massive outbreaks of disease like malaria. Not to mention, they didn't really have clean drinking water. Jamestown's survival and its immense struggles were entirely dictated by its geographic position.
Fast-forwarding a bit to Section 3, Saratoga, the Strategic Hudson.
Okay, now it's 1777, right in the middle of the American Revolutionary War. We're looking at a completely different landscape, but one where geography is just as critical. Let's trace the strategic domino effect that happened at Saratoga. The British had this grand plan. Step 1, control the Hudson River. Why? Because the Hudson River was essentially the geographic superhighway of the colonies. If the British could control it, they could physically cut off New England from the rest of the American colonies, totally starving the rebellion. But the Americans understood this geography too, and that leads to step 2. The Americans chose to fight at Saratoga specifically because of the terrain. They used the dense forests and ridges to trap the British army and pull off a massive victory. And that victory leads directly to step 3, convincing France to join the war on the American side. I mean, think about that. The physical layout of a river in New York directly influenced global diplomacy over in Europe. That is the crazy power of geography.
All right, shifting gears. Section 4, the Alamo, Crucial Crossroads.
Let's move our focus down south to the dusty, sun-baked terrain of San Antonio in 1836.
The fight at the Alamo is easily one of the most famous sieges in history, but why fight there? Well, it was located squarely at a highly strategic crossroads. In a vast, wide-open territory like Texas, whoever controlled the crossroads controlled the movement of troops, supplies, and information for the entire region. Now, the Alamo originally functioned as a Spanish mission, but its super thick walls made it a ready-made defensive complex. The Texan defenders knew that holding this exact geographic choke point was absolutely vital. And even though they were vastly outnumbered and eventually lost the battle, their stand at this specific location was so fierce that it became an unforgettable rallying cry. Remember the Alamo, that ultimately propelled Texas to independence.
Okay, let's pause our historical timeline for just a second. How can understanding the importance of a place help people make wiser and more respectful decisions? When you realize that the ground beneath your feet actually has a history, that rivers, mountains, and crossroads have been shaping human lives for centuries, it kind of changes you. It gives you spatial awareness. It helps you respect your environment and understand that the choices you make in your community today are going to ripple outward, just like the choices made at Jamestown, Saratoga, and the Alamo.
And that brings us perfectly to our final part, Section 5, Education with Biblical Morality.
Zooming out from all the maps and battles to the really big picture of your learning journey, true education without morality will ultimately hurt. At HeroesMart Academy, we believe deeply in intertwining biblical morality with everything we teach. You know, you can memorize every map, every date, every strategic river crossing in history. You can be the smartest, most supposedly educated person in the room. But honestly, what is the point of all that education if you just continue to make bad choices that hurt yourself and the people around you? True education isn't just about gaining knowledge. It's about gaining the moral compass to actually use that knowledge well.
And this is exactly why we anchor our learning in Scripture. Romans 8:6-7 promises peace of mind to everyone who keeps their minds spiritual. When you combine a really sharp, educated mind with a spiritual, morally grounded heart, the result is peace. It's the ability to navigate the complex geography of your own life with true wisdom. This isn't just some abstract theory. It's a promise, and it's the real-world experience of people who engage deeply with learning through this lens.
So, as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought for your homework reflection. History was shaped by the specific places people chose to settle, fight, and build. So, my question to you is, how will the places you choose shape your story? Where are you going to place yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually? I really hope today's lesson inspires you to look at your surroundings and the choices you make every day with a newfound wisdom and really solid spiritual grounding. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep exploring.